The folklore in Kid Cryptid wouldn't exist if it weren't for the rich history and vibrant cultures these stories come from. While we do our best to provide accurate information, we recognize that we are, at best, amateurs here. This podcast is best considered for entertainment purposes only, and it comes from a place of love and respect for the peoples behind the lore. Now, on with the show.
Hello, I'm Elias.
And I'm Sean, and you're listening to the podcast where I've already started to run out of superlatives to describe those creatures of debatable existence known as cryptids. Well, Elias, do you want to introduce this episode's featured creature since you picked it?
Yep.
Well, go ahead.
This cryptid today is called the Chupacabra.
So what can you tell me about the Chupacabra? I'm going to talk about it in a minute, but I just wanted to see what you know first.
Well, I kind of know that it looks like an alien and has spikes on its backs. But some of the Chupacabra pictures show that it's kind of like the werewolf. And it has, orange pants on. And, not orange pants, purple pants. And, is very savage.
Okay, that sounded pretty reasonable up until the pants thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what the name Chupacabra means?
Not entirely.
Take a guess.
Well, first of all, I think Chupa came from, like, a place. Like, they might have said Chupacabra because they were from a different state. Or I don't really know.
Well, that kind of starts leading into another question, and I'll answer them both at the same time then. So do you know where they come from?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so the Chupacabra originates from Puerto Rico, and the name Chupacabra literally means goat sucker.
That probably makes sense because it has nothing else to eat.
I'm sure there's more than goats in Puerto Rico.
Maybe cows?
Well, yeah, but goats, you're right. That goats seem to be its favorite food. So what made you want to choose the Chupacabra anyway?
Well, what I wanted to choose about the Chupacabra, was that its head is like a wolf, but has big canines. And I like that the fur is furry like a cat, and its face is like a dog.
Okay. Well, I guess I should start talking about the history of it then, huh?
Yep.
Now, unlike everything we've talked about so far, the Chupacabra doesn't have a very long history. In fact, the creature wasn't first reported until 1995, when a lady named Madeline Tolentino reported seeing it through a window. She described a reptilian-looking creature that stood like a kangaroo without a tail. She also described web-like film hanging from the bottom of its arms. Her husband and another person even tried to catch it, but it got away. Another eyewitness described it as follows. It was about 3 or 4 feet tall, with skin like a dinosaur. It had bright red eyes the size of a hen's egg, long fangs and multicolored spikes down its head and back.
So, the Chupacabra was found before I even existed?
You're only 8 years old. Pretty much everything has been found before you existed.
Good point.
I was probably close to your age when the Chupacabra first came about.
Good thing it wasn't in United States of America. Hey.
Now, at around the same time of her reported sightings, at least 150 farm animals, mostly goats, in the area had turned up dead. These animals were said to have no wounds but 2 puncture marks in their neck, the blood drained from their bodies. The wounds were about as big around as a straw, and about 3 or 4 inches long. Silverio Perez, a DJ, coined the name Chupacabra to describe the creature that had begun spreading panic throughout Puerto Rico. Chupacabra, meaning?
Goat sucker?
Correct. There have been some attempts to link the Chupacabra to various other reports of strange animal killings and mutilations that had taken place since the 1970s, but there hasn't been enough conclusive evidence to definitively say that they were done by the same creature. While heavily debated, the stronger evidence currently available leans towards the Chupacabra being a completely separate incident. At any rate, the word Chupacabra didn't even come into existence until 1995. So if you think about it, remember how like the Wendigos, thousands of years old, werewolves have been like since we've been able to write?
Year one is the werewolf, I'm pretty sure.
Correct. So that's all pretty a long time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Chupacabra has only been around for roughly 24 years.
24 years.
Yeah, so it's not very old.
It's not.
And I don't know about you, but to me it sounds a whole lot like a vampire.
It's kind of like a vampire, except it drinks goat blood, not necessarily human.
Fair enough. So it's like a goat vampire.
Yeah.
Or a vampire goat.
That'd be like a Chupagota.
No, think about it. Like, I mean, vampires are just humans that go around sucking blood, right? So wouldn't it make sense for the goat sucker to be a goat that sucks goat blood?
Why wouldn't the goat suck the Chupacabra's blood? Because it's the enemy of the goat.
I think I lost you on that one. Okay, we'll move on. Now, it wasn't long after these initial sightings that something strange happened. Apparently, the Chupacabra learned how to swim because people began reporting it in the southern parts of the United States after several mysterious animal mutilations were reported.
That's funny. Like, I see a Chupacabra in my mind swimming, and it's like human swimming, except it has a dog head. Very funny.
Over the course of the next few years, the Chupacabra rose from obscurity to one of the best-known cryptids in the world. What it lacked up for in history, it made up for in flashiness. Through all of this, however, they never had any luck catching one. They tried, of course, with no luck. So you tell me, how would you go about catching it?
If I saw a Chupacabra and I tried to catch it, and it would come, like, if it came to our house every night or so, I would get a net and wait. Well, I would get a tripwire and put a bell to that tripwire, and if the bell rang, I would let go of the rope that was attached to the net, and then I'd be like, gotcha.
But we don't have any goats, so why would it come here?
Fair point. Maybe we could get a goat from Puerto Rico if we go there.
Oh, so we have to have a Puerto Rican goat to use as bait? Now, I'm wondering, though, since it sounds like a vampire, I wonder if they ever tried tying garlic around their goats' necks.
I'm pretty sure the goat-sucking vampire would still not care.
You're saying it's not going to go for that?
It's kind of like a vampire, but it's not a bat.
All right, fine. Now, I also guess I should have been a little bit more specific. You see, one of the weird things with the Chupacabra is that it seems to have a different description in Puerto Rico than it does in the U.S. What sounded like some kind of alien lizard originally apparently also mutated on the swim over here. In the U.S., people describe the Chupacabra as walking on all fours, hairless, and looking much more like a dog or a coyote.
That scares me. It's like a cat.
I just said it looked like a dog. Where are you getting a cat?
You know how some cats have no hair?
Oh, okay. Now, that's fair.
Kind of like a cat, but it's a dog that has no hair.
Okay.
Ugly.
Now, does this also do anything to change your hunting plans? Alien lizard versus hairless dog?
Or alien lizard versus sniper.
No, we're talking about catching them.
Yeah. Hairless dog. I don't know. Like, I don't think dogs like to eat lizards. Or they don't like to attack them.
Okay. No, I meant...
I'm getting actually confused.
Yeah, I think so. So, since we live in the U.S. and the Chupacabra here looks less like an alien lizard, but more like a dog, would that change how you would try to catch it?
Well, if I tried to catch it, same thing as last time, except get a, rifle or if you have a shotgun, get it and then, probably shoot at the head because that's the most likely way to kill an animal.
So because it's the American version, we're going to shoot it instead of catch it in a net?
It might be scary and it might want to kill us.
You are taking the long and tried and true tradition of American monster hunting. Shoot first and ask questions later.
Yeah.
The Chupacabra's rise to cryptid stardom was short-lived, however. By the early 2000s, supposed bodies of the U.S. Chupacabra had been found. And this is where a lot of controversy has come into play. Every so-called Chupacabra corpse that has been examined has turned out to be a dog or coyote that also happened to be infected with a parasite that caused them to lose all their fur.
Okay, that scares me. I think of that parasite eating all the fur.
Close, but yeah, it made them very sick. And every time one of these bodies was found and it was proved to be not a Chupacabra, it became harder and harder to take the Chupacabra seriously. Even the Puerto Rican version suffered. Remember how that one looked?
Yeah.
So what did it look like?
Looked like a lizard or like an alien lizard that has spikes on its back.
Kinda, yeah. So here's the thing. In 1995, a movie called Species came out. The monster in that movie was called the Sill. It kinda looked reptilian with big eyes. It also had claws and spines along its back. Sound familiar?
The Chupacabra.
Yeah, sounds a lot like it, doesn't it?
If it's related to a movie, then it's obvious. Yeah.
So people wanting to disprove the existence of the Chupacabra pointed to this and the psychological concept known as confirmation bias. Any idea what that means?
No idea.
That's fair. Confirmation bias is when you interpret new information to confirm a belief you already had. In this case, people who had described seeing the Chupacabra had also already seen that movie. So when they saw something they didn't expect, they took it to confirm the reality of the movie. In other words, people weren't seeing what they thought they were seeing.
Okay, so they thought that, I picture them thinking that they were seeing the monster in that movie called Species coming out of the movie.
So not directly coming out of the movie, but it had left enough of a memory for them that they saw that monster and thought it was really scary. And then they saw something later that they couldn't quite explain, so they used that movie to explain what they had seen and said, well, the monster must be real.
I got no comments.
So think of it like this. If I tell you there's a monster under your bed, and you're in bed that night and you hear something strange, you're going to think it's the monster that I said was under your bed, right?
Or it's a raccoon.
I know you, and I also know that you would tend to think that it was something scary and not just a raccoon.
Yeah, kinda. Or a big cockroach.
Now, American skeptic Benjamin Radford spent 5 years working on debunking the Chupacabra as a whole, and he's put together some pretty solid work calling the whole thing into doubt. So just as quickly as it rose to fame, the Chupacabra seemed to fade out of the public eye. So what do you think, buddy? Is the Chupacabra something we haven't found yet? Or is it just a disease-ridden coyote and a bunch of people scared by a movie?
I think something we haven't found yet.
Really? Why do you think that?
Because we haven't seen it.
What do you mean we haven't seen it?
Like, we haven't seen any pictures of it, but, like, we have never seen a Chupacabra in real life, so I'm like...
So I do find the Chupacabra interesting from the standpoint that because it doesn't have such a huge backstory and kind of came about when technology was far more advanced, how quickly it kind of just came and went. If it had had a chance to pop up all those hundreds of years ago, would it still be something today that we kind of don't even really think too much about anymore? Or would it probably take the same path? I tend to think that it would have had much more staying power and hold a bigger place in lore today if it had come around sooner.
But all the cryptids that we have talked about were a long time ago.
Yeah, well, the Chupacabra is certainly a very modern cryptid. It doesn't have the benefit of history, but it did have the benefit of making a splash, and people love violence. And they also love mysteries. So the Chupacabra filled a perfect void at the time that it came about. Possibly as a sign of shortened attention spans to come, the Chupacabra vanished almost as quickly as it began. But if you visit Puerto Rico, there are still plenty of people there who will tell you that the Chupacabra lives, and it's only a matter of time before it strikes again. So, with that, I think this is bringing us to a close of another episode. Any final thoughts on the Chupacabra, Elias?
You can find the Chupacabra in TV shows and movies.
You can? All right.
Yeah, scary there.
So, I'll go ahead and let you end it off here.
I'm Elias.
And I'm Sean. And you've been listening to Kid Cryptid. Until next time.